It's time for another edition of Saturday with Seniors. Our big thank you goes out to Eisenhower's Tioga County Harley-Davidson, just south of Mansfield. You're looking for a Harley? They got you covered. You want to sell your Harley? They got you covered. Accessories, service, and more. Eisenhower's Tioga County Harley-Davidson. And Sally Ames joining us here. Actually, we're joining her here. We're at the Wellsboro Shared Home. And hello, Sally. How are you?
Hello. How are you?
I'm great. Now, you told me you were 78 years old, and I didn't believe it. When you came walking in the door, I thought, this isn't a senior.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
I mean that. It's amazing. You know, I've met people in the 70s and 80s, and so many people are really, they take care of themselves. They're in good shape and doing well.
Yeah.
Well, great.
They do.
You're 78 years old. Where did it all start? Where were you born?
I was born in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania in 1944.
Did your parents work in the coal mines, or your dad? Or?
No, my dad worked in lumber. He could go out. He could go out and tell you what any tree was in a forest.
Yeah.
And he did a lot of work, you know, cutting them down and that type of thing.
And did you have brothers or sisters when you were little?
Oh, yes, there's 5 of us. I had a sister that was younger than myself, and I've got 3 older brothers. Right now, we've narrowed it down to I have an older brother and there's me.
Yeah.
You know, things happen.
Yeah. Do you still get to see your older brother?
Yes, he lives in Troy.
Oh, that's great.
They own the Troy Luncheon.
Oh, well, if you stop by Troy Lunch and tell them to listen to this on YouTube.
Oh, I will.
It's on our YouTube channel, these, by the way, so anybody can hear it anywhere. That just goes on to kc101fm.com and take a listen.
Yes.
So you moved here when you were how old then?
I was in first grade.
And you moved to where?
We lived in Jackson Summit.
Up by Millerton.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And I grew up there. I lived there till I was 15. I went to Millerton School, it was sort of like a one-room schoolhouse, but there was 4 or 5 things there. But believe me, it was antiquated. You had the outdoor
porta potty, or not porta potty, outhouse, I should say.
Yes,
drop toilet.
The outhouse.
Yep.
And nobody had cell phones, and nobody had phones. You were lucky.
Was there even electric in the school, or yes?
Yes, there was electricity.
Not gas lights. You had electric, and it was a coal. I always pictured the old potbelly coal stove in the middle of the room.
Well, we didn't have that I remember, but it would, believe me, it was antiquated. Mm-hmm. But you got a good education, and
well, things were strict, right? You didn't just do whatever you wanted, and
you did not misbehave in school. You did not throw a chair or a table at anybody. Mm-hmm. You sat in your seat, and believe me, any little infraction you could get yelled at about. And believe me, with as talkative as I am, I got in trouble.
So trouble would be just getting spoken to, or did they put you in the corner, the dunce cap, all that then, or?
Oh no, you could get your hands wrapped
with a ruler or something,
right?
Or?
And you could even get a rap on your butt with a ruler. And you had to mind in school because if it got back to your parents, that was your second punishment.
Sometimes worse, I think.
Yes, it was.
I don't know if it was a different world, but even when I was a kid, mom would always say, "You just wait till your father gets home." I don't know that phrase.
My mom was the disciplinarian in our house. My dad could be, but he was a little overboard.
My mom was my lawyer. She's always like, "Kevin didn't mean to do all that, Tom," and then I'd still get in trouble.
Yes. And I did. I had a strict upbringing, which
was good, right?
It was good. As I said, you went to school and you behaved yourself.
How did you get to school? Did you take a school bus or walk?
School bus. But when we lived in Greene, New York, this is with my older brothers, I remember them talking about going to school in a covered wagon.
Wow. I haven't heard that one. I heard someone going to a sled-drawn carriage to the Wellsboro High School when it snowed. Their dad would take them by horse and carriage, but never a covered wagon.
Yeah, this was in Greene, New York, and my brothers, they went with a covered wagon.
That was the school bus, or was that just a friend that had one?
School bus. They picked up all the kids along the way. I didn't go to school by then. I wanted to, but I didn't. You know, I wasn't old enough to go.
But the ride looked like a lot of fun.
Yes, it did. But we moved to Elmira. That's where I started school, and you walked to school.
Yeah, and Elmira was a pretty big school then, even, I imagine.
Yes, it was. It was a big school district. But we weren't there that long, maybe a year or so, and then we moved to Jackson Summit, and the school bus picked you up in front of your house.
Yeah. Were the railroad tracks still going through there then? There was a big railroad trestle. I don't know what year it was taken down. I've seen old pictures of it. And
Yeah, it could be.
Yeah.
I don't remember.
It's hard to remember all those details.
Oh,
I like
yeah.
trains, so I remember the details of
Oh,
trains.
yeah.
Other people don't. That's not their thing. What did you like as a kid? What do you remember? What was your things that made you happy?
Well, we had TV after I was like in 5th or 6th grade, and you got one channel, Elmira. Mm-hmm. And I remember,
Take it or leave it. It was like
Take it
dinner
or
when your
leave it.
parents cooked it.
Yeah.
This is for dinner. Take it or leave it.
Yep. And you got to possibly watch one show at night, but your parents didn't let you sit in front of the TV set, even though we'd love to have done it, but I remember the movies, like I Love Lucy was a big one.
Yeah. The Howdy Doody show, Roy
Yes,
Rogers.
Yes, we watched those.
Do you remember air raid drills in school? Was that going?
Oh, yes, I do. I remember we went out in the hallway and you covered up with your coats along the wall.
So there'd be a siren that would go off in the school, a
Yes,
special siren,
yes,
and
yes.
kind of like a fire drill would be, or what I remember.
This was when I was in
but-
Millerton. This was the school, and
Yeah.
you went out in the hallway and you covered up with your coats. Children talk about their trauma nowadays. That was very traumatic for us as kids to think that we were going to get blown up.
Yeah, because you didn't know what was going on.
Well, you did to a certain extent, and you knew that it was an atomic bomb, and you'd heard about it, and it was not, you could just go in a second. And as I remember, it was very traumatic at that time.
Was there a dress code in school that you had to wear, or
Oh, yes.
uniforms, or?
Dress code was skirts or dresses below your knees. We never got to wear blue jeans until I moved to Mansfield. I remember wearing blue jeans there, but you could not
Wear them to school.
At Williamson, no, there was no. Everything was dresses.
And when you were a kid, did you have a lot of clothing like today's kids can't fit it all in their closets, and 30 pairs
No.
of shoes? And
No, you were lucky if you had one pair of shoes. Being as I had a sister 2 years younger, I had to share with her, and she wasn't too gentle on the clothes.
I don't know how much parents hand-me-downs, and I know it still exists with clothing and thing with kids, but
yeah.
that was like everything got handed down, right, when you were a kid?
my mother had some cousins, and when they would outgrow their things, there would come a big box, and it would be their clothing. So I was thrilled to death that I had new clothing, because my dad did not work when I was a child. We grew up in the welfare system, which to this day I'm very strict about everybody working.
Yeah.
That to me is you should be working.
Your dad wasn't able to work because of a physical
Well,
reason,
he
or you're
said
not
it
sure?
was a physical, but as I've grown up as a young person, I see people more shaped than my dad. I just think that he was an only child, and he grew up not having to do a whole lot because my grandfather apparently was well off and he didn't have to work.
So when your clothes got a rip or anything, nowadays people just throw them out. And your shoes get broken, you just throw them out. That's why we have a problem with landfills,
Yeah.
because we just throw everything out. It was different then, what?
It certainly was. You learned to fix clothing. My shoes could be flapping, the sole half off from it, but I had to wear them because I didn't have any other shoes.
Was there a cobbler, do you remember?
There was a cobbler in Mansfield for the longest time. I can't remember his name, but I know there was one there that you could get your shoes repaired.
And that was a common thing to fix your shoes. You didn't just throw them out. I mean, that was like your car. You didn't just throw it out because it needed an oil change,
And I can remember my dad saying that he could fix shoes. He could do he could do a lot of things. He was very gifted as far as they taught you everything to do.
Life skills,
Yes,
survival
life
skills.
Yes. I always told my children, I said, it's a good thing your grandfather is not alive because you would be learning how to sweep a floor correctly.
Yeah. There's a routine to everything. Back then, it was a workday wasn't 9 to 5 for everybody, 8 hours a day.
No.
Moms have a tough job now, but I can only imagine in the days before any pre-made food
Right.
and frozen food and microwave ovens. Like, did your mom make her own
mother-
butter and her own everything?
I do remember making butter.
Churning the butter and not just taking out the refrigerator.
And we had the stoves, the old-fashioned stoves that you put coal in.
The pot belly round type ones.
Well, the flat ones too that you
Yeah.
cooked on and you baked in. My mother could bake 12 loaves of bread and bake it in that oven that you fixed with wood. I have all I can do to turn this thing on and make sure to warm your oven up, and my mother could do it on that stove.
No thermostat on that. You just had to get it right.
Yes. And you had a refrigerator for 5 children and a husband and everything. Not very big, but we did.
Was it an ice box or refrigerator? It was an actual
refrigerator. But they were tiny, and there was just a small space for ice.
Yeah.
And it made its own ice.
So where'd you do your grocery shopping? Did you go to Elmira or to Mansfield or all over?
No, you went to Jackson Summit. There was a little grocery store on the corner there, right across from where Keck's Meats plant is now.
And that was enough to do your whole family's groceries there?
Yes. Well, as I said, we grew up with...
Yeah, staple items were what everybody bought. Now you look at a grocery store, there's a whole aisle of potato chips. Yeah. There's a whole aisle of soda. There's a whole aisle of junk food. And back then, none of those aisles were there, right? I mean, there might have been a little bit of soda, but I mean, it was really...
I don't remember soda. Well, I don't think I got any until I was a teenager. I don't remember a lot of these things. Chips, you didn't get chips, potato chips.
Yeah, that's a whole aisle now in a grocery store, and it's...
And you didn't have them back when I was a youngster. I think we grew up a lot healthier, too, because you ate everything out of the garden.
Not only that, you got exercise, too. There wasn't sitting around the sedative lifestyle of watching TV all day.
No. You got up and you had chores all day long. And then,
what type of chores did you have as a kid?
Oh, you had to pull the weeds out of the garden.
Oh, I had that one, too. I hated that one.
I hated that
I'm old enough to remember that one.
I hated it, too. And you did the dishes.
Did you have a dishwasher or were you the dishwasher?
I had the dishwasher. My sister liked doing dishes. I did not.
That's a great sister to have, someone who likes to do dishes.
She was. In a lot of ways, she was a great sister. I adored her.
How about your laundry? Did you have an actual washing machine in the young days?
We had the ones that you just put water in and you had a wringer on it. Mm-hmm. That automatically wring out your clothes and stuff. And then you had 3 tubs to rinse your clothes in.
Yeah.
And then you hung up your clothes.
These were tubs you warmed up on the stove, right? The wood to coal stove.
Wooden coal stove. And my mother hung her clothes out. Didn't matter what the weather was.
Yeah. Even in January, you'd use the clothesline.
Yep.
Beat the frost out of them, I think is what they would do with a stick.
Then you beat the frost. At the end of the day, you went out and gathered them up, but you brought them in and you thawed them out.
Wow. So how would you keep the wood stove going at night or the coal stove? You have someone have to get up during the night and stoke that on a cold night?
Well, my dad did.
Yeah.
We had a coal stove in the kitchen which we cooked on, and then we had a potbelly one in the living room that kept the other part of the house warm.
Yeah. And you chopped your own firewood too?
Yeah, my dad did.
Yeah.
And the boys did.
They say that keeps you warm twice. Once when you chop it and twice when you burn it.
Yes. Definitely.
15 years old, you moving to Mansfield in town, or where did you go?
In the country, walked a mile to school. And they talk about you walked and it didn't matter what the weather was. And you didn't really have the proper clothing at that time to be walking that mile to catch the school bus in the morning.
Can I just ask, was it uphill both ways?
Yeah, it was uphill both ways.
That's Jason, the producer, asking if it was uphill both ways, and you knew the answer to that. And your mittens and hats, were they handmade in your family?
Handmade. My mother made them.
My dad, as a kid, used to wear bread bags on his feet.
Yes,
so
I can remember that.
If his shoes leaked, his feet wouldn't get wet between the socks and the shoes. That was
right.
He said my grandma went through the Great Depression and never threw out any plastic, but she was more excited about the bag the bread came in than the bread itself.
Yes, definitely. I grew up with homemade bread, which people nowadays just think that's wonderful, if they get a slice of homemade bread.
And this was homemade. You bought the flour in a big bag and you bought the sugar in a big bag and you made your own butter.
Yes, you did a lot of things. Children don't have to do that nowadays, but I'm thinking the old people could survive a little bit better.
Yeah, you have better survival skills. That's for sure. So where did you live in Mansfield?
I lived in Mainsburg, outside of Mainsburg.
So Mainsburg was there was a feed mill was there then. Was there a grocery store and a post office right in town, if I remember my history right?
Yes, but where I lived, which was outside of Mainsburg, was, rural. There was nothing to do.
Did you have a bicycle or how did it?
No, I didn't have a bicycle. We had one bicycle that we shared with 5 kids. There was a lot of sharing back in those days. You didn't have two of anything or three of anything like you do nowadays.
So would you go out on your own? Because there's no cell phones, no way for mom to check on you. Did you walk all the way to town on your own? And
At 15, no, we get picked up, We'd figure out a way to get somebody that drove, and we'd go to the skating rink in Mansfield. That was a place to go on the weekend.
that was on South Main Street. That's where the Goodwill store is now. And
Yeah, in that area.
I was an Agway back
Yeah.
in the mid-90s, but I knew before that at some point it was a skating rink. So what were skating nights like?
Oh, it was fun. You met your friends, your girlfriends, and you met guys.
Yeah.
At 15, that was important.
That was exciting. Did you wear your poodle skirt to go skating, or was that
Oh,
not?
Well, I didn't have a poodle skirt. I was lucky that I had a skirt.
Okay. And you had your own roller skates.
No, you rented
rented
roller
skates there as well.
skates there.
How busy was it? Do you remember it being really crowded?
Oh, yes, it was very crowded because that was the mainstay of entertainment, and you don't have that anymore.
No, well, I think there's a little rink in Tioga, and you can go up to
Yeah.
Elmira. There's a place up in Elmira still skating, but
Yeah. My daughter just rented the one in Tioga for her twins' birthday party this last year. They lived downstate, and they came up and they rented that, and she had her birthday party, and the kids all skated. I thought that was great.
When Francis Murphy was around and ran that, when I first met him, he was still playing organ music for the kids to skate to.
Oh, yes,
he
I
insisted on
remember
that. And when you were roller skating, right, you weren't hearing Elvis or rock and roll music. You
You're hearing Lawrence Welk music, which I like, still do.
Yeah. And is that type of music you like growing up?
No, I was big on Elvis. Dion and the Belmonts,
Yeah.
songs like that.
What did your parents think of Elvis? A lot of
My dad and mother both had a very strong feeling that there was going to be the corruption of us.
that Elvis was the end of the world.
Yes, it was. And any of the other rock and roll music was the end of the world.
It was kind of a rebel time. Muscle cars and greasers and leather jackets. I don't know. You watched the movie Grease, and I just imagined it being like that, but maybe not. Was it like that?
Well, the guys, I remember the guys. The girls had poodle skirts, but the guys were, the muscle shirts and the leather jackets.
Cigarettes rolled up in their sleeves, so their
and
shirt.
back then, and everybody smoked back then,
Cigarette companies weren't being quite honest with us about everything. You could smoke
they
at
were not.
school, probably. Then.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
You could go to the bathroom and smoke. But when I came to Wellsboro, it was basically about the same as Mansfield as far as you could smoke on the property.
And so I think some things have definitely changed for the better. We really don't want our kids taking up
Definitely.
smoking. When they're an adult, make your adult decision, but not at that.
That's right. But you know what? Your brains fall out when you become a teenager.
Well, they do. You do make some. I think Jason's going to agree with that. We've all done. And those 4 or 5 years of high school, we do 20 years worth of stupid stuff.
That's right. And it's just part of going through the forest and finding your pathway to.
Did you do any stupid things that you're willing to admit, or we don't have to if you don't want
I've always done stupid.
Any that you'll share? It's past the statute of limitations.
I still got kids.
Okay.
I'm not going to have them use those kids.
Oh, okay, I see what you're saying. We have to write it down somewhere so that generations down can get the story. How about the movie theater in Mansfield, the Twain Theater?
I only was there several times, and the same with Wellsboro. I did not go to the movies a lot, but I did go more in Wellsboro than Mansfield.
Wow, this is really interesting. I'll tell you what, can you stick around? We'll do part 2 next week. I'd love to talk with you some more if you got some time, if that's okay with you here. It's all brought to you by Eisenhower's Tioga County, Harley Davidson, Sally Ames joining us, 78 years old, grew up outside of Millerton area, and we'll talk with her some more next week. So I'm looking forward to that. Thanks, Sally.
You're welcome.
All brought to you by Eisenhower's Tioga County, Harley Davidson. If you're looking for a new bike, a used bike, any service for your bike, go see the folks at Eisenhower's